Donald Trump accepts a formal transition should begin for Joe Biden to take office. He says the agency overseeing the handover must do what needs to be done, but he doesn't concede and says the fight goes on. We'll have the latest live from Washington. Also this lunchtime, as the Health Secretary confirms that things should get back to normal after Easter, we're still waiting for news on the four nations' plans for Christmas. Test negative and will reduce your quarantine. The new rules for people travelling to England from abroad. From the history section to the crime section, the missing Darwin notebooks that Cambridge University Library now says were stolen 20 years ago. And meet Kuno, the hero dog who's receiving the Animal Victoria Cross for saving British soldiers fighting in Afghanistan despite being shot himself.
Coming up in sports later in the hour on BBC News, a lifeline for clubs with up to 4,000 fans allowed into matches in some areas of England next week.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. It wasn't a concession and he certainly hasn't phoned Joe Biden to congratulate him, but Donald Trump's green light to presidential transition is as close as we've got so far. And now, 3 weeks after the election, that formal handover can begin. Donald Trump acknowledged in a tweet that the transition was underway, but he said he would continue to challenge the outcome of the poll. Joe Biden's team will now have access to federal funds and federal office space. It also paves the way for him to receive regular national security briefings. Peter Bowes reports.
A step closer to the White House, the green light for President-elect Joe Biden formally to begin the transition process with the Trump administration. 3 weeks after the election, the General Services Administration, the government body that helps with the handover, finally acknowledged that Mr. Biden was the apparent winner. President Trump tweeted that he had approved his administration's cooperation with the handover, but without conceding the election. Our case strongly continues. We will keep up the good fight, and I believe we will prevail. The president added that in the best interest of the country, he was recommending that his team does what needs to be done with regard to initial protocols. It opens the door to a fund of more than $6 million for Joe Biden to set up the new administration. The president-elect will get access to top security briefings, office space and key government officials. The Biden team welcomed the move. Today's decision is a needed step to begin tackling the challenges facing our nation, including getting the pandemic under control and our economy back on track. The country is still divided over the election result, but there's a growing acceptance amongst Republicans that Mr. Trump is on his way out. With few legal avenues remaining for the president to challenge the election, Joe Biden is building a team of veteran Washington figures. The message, safe hands and experience first. The Biden administration, now with an official government website, is taking shape. Peter Bowes, BBC News, Los Angeles.
Let's go to Gary O'Donoghue, who's in Washington. So a transition, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, the mechanics of the transition are now being put in place. So Joe Biden gets to trouser that $6 million. The money isn't really the issue. The issue is access to information, access to briefings, access to people, that .gov a website, the most concrete sign of all that. And he gets to press ahead with his plans for his administration. The one thing I would say, Simon, of course, is that the downside of this for Joe Biden is that from now on, really, things like the COVID pandemic become the Biden pandemic rather than the Trump pandemic. So his plans for combating the virus, for getting the states to do the things he wants them to do in terms of restrictions, these all start to fall into his lap. And any kind of idea that he'll have some sort of honeymoon period from January the 20th onwards, I think a lot of people around him will be saying that won't necessarily happen because the numbers could be a lot worse by the middle of the winter when he takes over.
Gary, thank you very much. Gary O'Donoghue there. The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has defended the government's plans to reintroduce a tiered system of restrictions once the lockdown in England comes to an end next week. The government is still discussing plans for the easing of restrictions over the festive period with leaders of the devolved administrations. It comes as the number of weekly registered deaths involving coronavirus reached its highest level in England and Wales since May. Our health correspondent Anna Collinson reports.
For weeks they've been closed, but when lockdown ends and the three-tiers system is brought in, shops in England can reopen. As for which region will be in which tier, the government is still deciding.
We're waiting for the latest data, which we should get tomorrow and make an announcement on Thursday. And what we'll be looking for are the number of cases in that particular area, specifically the number of cases also in people over 60, because we're concerned those are people who often end up in hospital and where a lot of the fatalities come from.
The new tiers will be brought in from December the 2nd. Shops, gyms and hairdressers can open, but the measures are tougher this time around. In Tier 1, the rule of 6 applies both indoors and outdoors. Pubs and restaurants can serve customers, but last orders will be at 10, closing at 11. In Tier 2, there's no mixing indoors, while the rule of 6 applies outdoors. Pubs and restaurants must serve food. In the top tier, it's takeaway only. Mixing of households is banned unless it's in an outdoor public place like a park. Which area goes into which tier will be decided on factors like case numbers and pressure on the NHS, and will be reviewed every 2 weeks.
Now it's kind of a vulnerable time with the cold going around. It could be a bit dangerous mixing with COVID.
We are getting really good news about the vaccines. So I think that's our Christmas present, and we have to just be happy about it.
If restaurants and pubs weren't allowed to open, I mean, there would be a lot of closures and it would be the death knell to a lot of businesses.
New data says COVID deaths are continuing to rise, with nearly 3,000 in the week to the 13th of November. The dotted line on this graph shows the number of deaths we would expect to see this year. After a big rise during the first wave, excess deaths are now 19% above the 5-year average. But there are hopes they're starting to stabilise. This morning, MPs asked the Health Secretary if we can expect another national lockdown before spring.
No, I very much hope not to, by having a tiered system which is calibrated to be able to bring the virus under control where that's necessary.
So as businesses once again prepare to open their doors, the government hopes its combination of tiers, mass testing and potential vaccines will get the virus under control this winter. Anna Collinson, BBC News.
Our political correspondent Helen Catt is in Westminster. All eyes on what's happening in December, but we do know there will be tiers before Christmas.
Yes, but as you said, Christmas being the thing that everyone's looking to at the moment, and we know there's going to be a COBRA meeting later this afternoon for which the four nations will be discussing what they plan to do about that. Now, we may not get a final decision today, but certainly it does feel like one is imminent, the next couple of days at the latest. And we know the rough shape of what it is that they're trying to agree, a common set of arrangements that will apply across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, which will allow families to meet for a short period of a few days over Christmas. Ministers have been equally clear, though, that this isn't going to be a free-for-all. What they're talking about is setting a number of households who can take part in these temporary festive bubbles for that time period. Now, of course, the four nations have been starting from different places because depending on where you are in the UK, the rules are different on who you can meet and how. So some of the things they've had to look at are things like, well, what should actually count as a household? What should the number of days be that these special arrangements would apply for? And what's going to be the impact on public transport if you're only going to give people a very short window in which to move around to go and see family? So those are the sort of things that we know they have been considering. We should hopefully get the final detail which will allow people to plan for Christmas in the coming days.
Helen, thank you very much. People arriving in England from abroad who are subject to quarantine rules will soon be able to significantly reduce their self-isolation period if they pay for a COVID test after 5 days and get a negative result. The rules will come into force from the 15th of December, with the tests from private firms costing between £65 and £120. Simon Browning reports.
Airports, airlines and the aviation industry have been crippled by coronavirus. Airports are running skeletal operations. Stansted Airport currently closes at 5 p.m. But today, there is hope. Today's announcement that a test and release programme, which could end quarantine after just 5 days, could make us travel again. This is the Stansted Airport Departure Lounge, where today only 13 flights have left the terminal. Tomorrow there's 6, the day after 5. Usually at this time of year there'd be hundreds as people escape for some autumn-winter sunshine. But it's hoped this new testing regime will bring back some desperately needed passengers. After months of having to quarantine for 2 weeks, the government now believes cutting that period by more than half is safe.
Having consulted very extensively with medical experts, we believe that 5 days plus a very reliable test is sufficient time now to be able to release people, and that the test capacity is there to do this now.
But there is concern about the public's ability to successfully test itself.
To take a self-administered sample is often not good enough. You really need to go right to the back of your throat and nose and get a good sample. Having got a good sample, it's also important that it is tested properly in a reliable, sensitive kit.
Passengers who opt to use the testing programme to cut their quarantine period will have to pay for their tests, as they will not be provided by the NHS. But with some private COVID tests costing around £100 each for a family of travellers, it's a big hit to the holiday budget.
It's a lot of money, it's an additional payment that families are going to have to pay, family of 4, that is an additional quite heavy cost. But that said, a lot of people didn't get to go away this summer.
Tens of thousands of jobs have already been lost in the aviation sector. Airports are quieter than ever before. Whilst industry broadly welcomes the new regime, the UK's biggest airport thinks more can be done.
It'll take a while before the rest of the world gets to the same position and we can all travel with confidence. So this is only a first step, but we don't know how business travel will change.
For now, the policy is England only, as other UK nations evaluate the evidence and risks. With holidays and flights at record low levels, it's hoped this new testing policy will give us the confidence to take to the skies soon. Simon Browning, BBC News.
Russia says its coronavirus vaccine is up to 95% effective at stopping people developing COVID-19 symptoms. Russia has been criticised by some scientists in the West who've accused it of cutting corners in an effort to try to rush out its vaccine, something that Russia has denied. The Russian government says it will charge less for its vaccine than rivals and aims to produce more than 1 billion doses at home and abroad next year. Hauliers are warning of mayhem at Holyhead Port when the Brexit transition period ends in just over 5 weeks' time. It's one of the UK's biggest ports and a major route for goods between the island of Ireland and the UK mainland. But Holyhead's owner, Stena Line, says that despite major changes being introduced in a short time frame, the process will be smooth. Brian Meeshan reports.
Passenger numbers have soared at Holyhead. It's the UK's second biggest roll-on, roll-off port after Dover, taking around 1,200 lorries and trailers a day across the Irish Sea. But whether the end of the UK-EU transition period and the new rules coming into force on January the 1st will bring chaos or calm depends on who you ask. The view from Irish hauliers is clear enough.
After the deadline and the UK Brexiting, the decisions still won't be made. They'll unfold as the problems appear. That leads to a certain degree of mayhem. So you will have time delay, you'll have a lot of anxious moments, you'll have a lot of truck people getting a little hot under the collar, you'll have ferry times delayed, and you'll have a general upset. It is obvious you're going to have upset.
Upset too locally. Customs checks won't be done on the shores of Holyhead when they're fully enforced by the UK in July. They'll be done inland, it's thought, at Warrington and Birmingham. Political leaders say that's a missed opportunity for creating local jobs and a security concern.
My plea to any government is that any checkpoint should be here on the island in Holyhead, as close to the port as possible. And the main concern we have is the impact that's going to have on the use of this port and the loss of jobs. So the sooner we have any clarification on that, we can make sure that the jobs here are safeguarded and that the people of Holyhead don't have to worry.
Well, strong winds here today and strong words from hauliers and politicians. But Stena Line says that it's been bringing cargo and passengers across the Irish Sea for 25 years and it's confident this process will go smoothly.
The integration of our freight checking systems is only now just being completed. So we are going live testing in the next 2 weeks. So the time schedules are very, very tight on these things. We're starting to educate our staff on the new check-in processes and so on and so forth. So yes, I have a good degree of confidence that we are prepared for the here and now. But, the time schedules are tight.
Another busy day at Holyhead before dawn this morning. The clock is ticking as it counts down to major changes in how this port operates and becomes a gateway out of the European Union. Brian Meakin, BBC News, Holyhead.
It's 1:15, our top story this lunchtime. Donald Trump accepts a formal transition period should begin for Joe Biden to take office, but he doesn't concede and says the fight goes on. And coming up, one couple's plan to get kids all kitted up for Christmas.
Coming up in the sport on BBC News in the next 15 minutes, we'll look ahead to tonight's Champions League matches. Chelsea could qualify for the knockout stages if they beat Rennes at Stamford Bridge.
The bombing of an Ariana Grande concert at Manchester Arena in 2017 claimed the lives of 23 people and injured hundreds more. It also changed the lives of many people who were caught up in it, including Usman Ahmed, a student who was working his last shift as a steward before sitting his A-levels, and Sharon Crawford, a mum of 3 who was picking up her daughter from the concert. This is their story of a night that will connect them to each other forever. And warning, you may find some of the details described in this piece upsetting.
It was just a very happy, sunny day. Izzy was just buzzing. Ariana was one of the ones that she really wanted to see. When she started to sing One Last Time, we got up off the steps and walked to the door.
Everyone in the crowd, they were just screaming and they were just like, oh, this is amazing and stuff.
She did another encore with Dangerous Woman. I knew Izzy wouldn't leave till then. I knew we're in for a wait, stood here, and that's obviously just when it happened.
People stopped for a second, it was a brief second, and then people were just trampling over anyone possible.
Just an almighty bang, darkness.
They asked the crowd who was outside, has anybody got any first aid training or is anybody first aid trained? I ran so fast to the door and
just chaos everywhere.
And at that moment it was just like, I either run home or I stay and help these people.
And I didn't want to take my eyes off a space on the ceiling.
Out of everyone, I just seen her. She was flat on the floor looking at the ceiling.
This young lad came up to me and he said,
my name's Usman, what's your name?
His eyes were just so dark and he just was so compassionate.
And I could tell she was drifting in and out of consciousness.
I'm thinking, is this it? Is this where I'm going, it's going to be the end?
She starts shaking quite violently and she's saying, I remember she's saying, I don't want to die here. Out of nowhere I say, you need to think about your children, you need to think about your kids. And as soon as I said that, her eyes just completely lit up.
There was a bolt through my leg. So he knew it was bleeding really heavily.
I take my belt off and I wrap it around her upper thigh.
For a young lad, he was really calm. I would like to, meet up with him and just, I don't know what to expect. It's hard because thank you doesn't seem enough. Hi.
Hi, Sharon.
How are you?
I'm all right, I was doing a lot better, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've got over sort of the physical sides of it, I'll always have something going on physically, but it's, the mental side's more than anything,
exactly,
isn't it?
Yeah. I hit a really low point from 2019. It's like you're thrown in a world where you don't belong.
Yeah.
You're a complete outcast, you don't belong in that world,
Yeah.
and you want to feel wanted, you want to feel normal. You just want to feel normal again.
Yeah.
So you have to practice smiling in the mirror, you have to wear a mask.
I think for you saw so much more than I did. You know, I was just lying there. I mean, thankfully you were there.
I must have said it 1,000 times to you. I said it's going to be all right. You're going to get home safe to your children. Yeah.
And I did. So you were right. So you know, that's the way to look at it, isn't it? But it has been lovely just to see you again, really. And you know, we don't have to stay strangers, do we?
No,
you know.
no.
We used to have these heroes that went in. He was one, and I just don't think he realises he actually is one, because he just did what he thought was his job.
Usman Ahmed talking to Sharon Crawford there. And details of organisations offering information and support with mental health are available at bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on 08000 155 998. The High Court has ruled that the American woman alleged to have killed Harry Dunn in a road accident last year was entitled to diplomatic immunity. The teenager died after being injured outside an RAF base in Northamptonshire. Anne Sakoulas, who was accused of driving on the wrong side of the road, was allowed to leave the UK after he died. Duncan Kennedy reports.
Harry Dunn had been a carefree teenager when he met his death in August 2019. He was knocked off his bike here in Northamptonshire by a car driven by a woman driving on the wrong side of the road. She was Anne Sakoulas, the wife of an American technical assistant at a nearby US military base. Soon after the crash, Miss Sakoulas left Britain, claiming diplomatic immunity. But Harry's parents, Charlotte and Tim, refused to accept that and went to the United States to try to get Miss Sakoulas to come back. That failed, so they launched a judicial review to ask the British courts if Miss Sakoulas had diplomatic immunity. Today they heard they had lost their case, and that the High Court ruled Miss Sakoulas did have immunity.
It is upsetting, of course it is, but it is just a blip. It's just another hurdle. We've come across many of them.
Yes, we have.
So we're going to keep going.
The Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, said the judges had ruled in his favour over immunity, but he said he felt for Harry's parents.
There'll be no solace to the family of Harry Dunn. My heart's with them. We've made clear right from the outset we're on their side. We've called and we continue to call for Anne Sakoulas to return home to face justice.
Harry's parents appealed to Anne Sakoulas once again today to come back to Britain to face justice. They say they will appeal today's court ruling and won't give up the fight for their son. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News in Oxfordshire.
Aston Villa captain Jack Grealish has pleaded guilty to 2 charges of careless driving, including one offence in connection with a crash during March's coronavirus lockdown. The England international admitted an offence in connection with a collision involving his Range Rover on March the 29th, 6 days after restrictions were imposed nationwide. Grealish also admitted a second charge of careless driving relating to allegations he drove without due care and attention on the M42 in October. 20 years after they disappeared, Cambridge University Library now says that 2 of Charles Darwin's notebooks have probably been stolen. For years, they'd worked on the theory that the small books, worth millions, had simply been put back in the wrong place. But they still can't find them, and now they've reported it to police. Our arts correspondent Rebecca Jones reports.
Imagine losing something in here. Cambridge University Library is vast. 200 kilometres of shelving, 10 million books, maps and manuscripts, and amidst it all, 2 missing notepads by Charles Darwin.
Each of these notebooks, which are the same as the ones we're looking for, are about the size of a postcard. They are written in landscape, so across the page, and they have, of course, Darwin's writing.
The notebooks have been digitised, but the originals haven't been seen since November 2000, when they were taken to be photographed in a temporary studio in the university's grounds. It wasn't until 2 months later that librarians realised they were missing. They assumed they'd been put back on a different shelf, and there were a number of extensive searches. Now a new team thinks they got it wrong.
I have reluctantly come to the conclusion that these notebooks have probably been stolen. This is heartbreaking for me. This is heartbreaking this has happened. I've spent my whole career devoted to the preservation of cultural heritage, and I will spend all of my time here trying to determine the possibility of recovery of these items.
In 1837, a young Charles Darwin had recently returned from the Galapagos Islands aboard HMS Beagle. In his notebooks, he's working through scientific ideas inspired by his trip, and in one of them, he sketches the Tree of Life.
Your help could be critical in seeing the notebooks safely returned.
The library has now launched an appeal calling for help from the public, former staff and researchers in locating the notebooks by one of the best-known scientists of all time. It'll take another 5 years to complete a full search of the building here, so it is still possible the notebooks could turn up. In the meantime, their disappearance has been reported to Cambridgeshire Police. And if you have any information about where they might be, the library would love to hear from you. Rebecca Jones, BBC News, Cambridge.
The body of one of two fishermen who went missing off the Sussex coast on Saturday has been found. He's been identified as 26-year-old Adam Harper from Devon. His next of kin have been notified. A third crew member was rescued after being found clinging to a buoy and taken to hospital at the weekend. For many children, a football shirt is a cherished Christmas gift. Replica kits are big business and they're expensive. Even a child's shirt can cost around £50. So after a year of financial strain for so many people, one family in Gloucestershire began an appeal. Their campaign is to make Christmas Kitmas. Joe Wilson explains.
Through an open patio door, we filmed the Watsons' living room, where shirts of the world converge. Football kits for Christmas. In previous years, Paul Watson would collect them for refugee camps. This winter, he sensed the need nearby.
Initially, it was very local, and we thought, let's contact Stroud's Food Bank, and they've got an organisation called Kids Stuff, and said, you know, they always give Christmas things to children who might not get presents, and we thought, let's see if they wanted some football shirts. And then it sort of snowballed from there, really.
Another delivery.
Well, shirts are coming in all the time. That's another delivery to the nerve centre of the operation here in Gloucestershire. But the charity is connected with 7 different distribution centres in the UK, including Liverpool.
We've been in community centres where parents have had to take their kids out of football training because they're training in the school uniforms and they can't afford a new school uniform. So without people providing kits for them, the public, they wouldn't be playing.
Donations of money or shirts are welcome. Any team. But the famous foreign clubs are favoured. Whoever you support at home, these colours seem neutral. Here's Paul delivering in Stroud. His brother Mark and wife Lizzie make up the team. They have around 300 shirts so far, but want more.
We haven't put a deadline on it simply because we know that there are centres who support people all year round, and so we can find homes to anything we get.
For now, the appeal is seasonal, with website and punchline. Never too early to say
Merry Kitmas.
Joe Wilson, BBC News, Stroud.
A military dog who charged through enemy gunfire to save the lives of British soldiers in Afghanistan has been awarded the animal equivalent of the Victoria Cross. During a raid, Kuno tackled a gunman and was hit by bullets in both back legs. After losing one of his paws as a result, he became the first UK military dog to get custom-made prosthetics. Tim Muffet reports.
Kuno, the PDSA Dickin Medal.
Military honours for a remarkable dog. At Woolwich Barracks in south-east London, 4-year-old Kuno was honoured today for his actions in Afghanistan last year. He was supporting UK forces as they came under attack from Al-Qaeda extremists.
He's been honoured because he performed exceptionally on the battlefield. Exceptional courage, exceptional loyalty, devotion to duty. He did a fantastic job, saved lives when it mattered.
The Ministry of Defence have asked that Kuno's handler at the time remains anonymous.
I moved over to him and he was hobbling around and he was clearly in a bad way. His paw was all mangled up. It didn't look good, so we bandaged that up. He had what's called a through and through on his thigh, so the bullet had gone straight through his thigh and out the other side.
You can see Kuno's prosthetic limbs here, which allow him to be mobile. He was actually the first serving military dog to be fitted with them.
Lots of challenges, varied challenges, quite severe injuries, but also a combination of injuries that were difficult to manage individually. They would have been very achievable, but as a combination, they were challenging. He's a brilliant patient. It was quite clear that he was going to take everything in his stride and stood the best chance of a full recovery.
The PDSA Dickin Medal for animal bravery was introduced in 1943. As well as dogs, horses, pigeons, even a cat have previously been honoured. For this 4-year-old Belgian Malinois, retirement in Dorset now beckons. Kuno has certainly earned it. Tim Muffet, BBC News.
Hasn't he just? Now let's have a look at the weather. Here's Matt Taylor.
Thank you very much, Simon. Very good afternoon to you. Well, if you're in parts of Western Scotland, Northern Ireland and the northwest of England, let's be honest, it's been a stinker of a few days weather-wise. We've seen up to around 3 inches of rain fall since yesterday morning. But things are going to change during the next 24 hours. And it's not the only thing set to change in the days ahead in our weather. It's comparatively mild out there today. Temperatures UK-wide, either side of around 12 degrees. But by Friday, you'll be lucky to get above 5 Celsius in most parts of the country. You'll be digging out the warm jacket, the ice scraper, and putting on the fog lights as well. Now, that colder air is waiting in the wings to the northwest of us at the moment. Dividing that and the mild air that's with us is the weather front, which has been producing all those problems in Western Scotland, Northern Ireland over the last few days. More heavy rain to come here through this afternoon, but it will start to ease off this evening. Rain at times elsewhere across Scotland in towards Cumbria. Much of England and Wales, though, will be dry, some sunshine around, and temperatures could actually peak at around 14 Celsius for 1 or 2. That leads us into quite a mild night for England and Wales, but it's going to turn wetter across the north and west of England and Wales as our weather front is finally on the move. Clearer, colder conditions for Scotland and Northern Ireland with a few showers around. Temperatures dropping down here, low enough for a touch of frost in 1 or 2 well-sheltered areas, but well and truly frost-free for England and Wales. Temperatures for some not dropping below around 10 or 11 degrees. So into Wednesday, this is the big picture. That weather front is still with us. It's only going to slowly move its way eastwards, lighter winds around it, and this wave to the southwest is going to delay its clearance. Things will brighten up to the north and west of England and Wales through the day. Sunshine comes out, sunny spells throughout with 1 or 2 showers in Scotland, Northern Ireland, but staying cloudy through some southern counties of England, East Anglia, the East Midlands, rain, drizzle at times, same too to the Channel Islands, but the mildest of the air just about clinging on. Temperatures for most, though, back down into single figures as we finish tomorrow afternoon, and with clear skies around, the colder air in place, a widespread frost to come through Wednesday night into Thursday morning. And for parts of southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland and northwest England, there'll be some fog too. Some of that fog could be quite dense through the morning rush hour, and for 1 or 2 it'll be a struggle to shift. But for most of you, Thursday, crisp, clear day, lots of sunshine around, lovely end to autumn really. Will be some low cloud lingering around the English Channel and a bit more cloud to the Hebrides later, but notice the temperatures continuing to drop away. 1 or 2 spots still only around 5 or 6 degrees. More on the way of frost as we go through Thursday night into Friday morning, but fog will be a greater issue on Friday morning, more widely across the country. That will stop the rise in temperature. Staying cold this weekend, a little bit of sunshine, lots of cloud at times, but at least, certainly for Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, compared with the conditions you've had over the last few days, it is looking a lot drier. Find out the details weather-wise for wherever you are, of course, on the BBC Weather app and on the website. But for now, back to Simon.
Matt, thank you very much. A reminder of our top story. Donald Trump accepts a formal transition should begin for Joe Biden to take office, but he doesn't concede and says the fight goes on. That's all from the BBC News at 1. On BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. From me, good afternoon.